because there are basically two reactions on the difficulties which we have. We may become very negative. We may become very bitter because of all difficult experience. We may accumulate all this pain and sufferings which we underwent. And because of this bitterness, we will feel as a victim. This victim mentality is the mentality which basically ruins the whole world, because when we feel that we're a victim, we develop also some revengeful feelings toward others, toward our perpetrators, and we want to revenge and to get back to them. And when the bitter feelings are accumulated within us, it ultimately manifests as hatred, as envy, as anger. So sometimes we see old people who live difficult life, and everyone's life is difficult. There is not a single person in this earth who will say that my life was so easy and so cozy and so nice and so comfortable. Everyone has their load and their difficulties. So this is one attitude. We take these difficulties and we feel that it's something very unjust. And that's exactly what Ashwatthama did. The villain of this whole drama, who killed Kunti's grandchildren and at night in a very cruel way, he was accumulating and more or less cherishing these bitter feelings, and it erupted from him as this fit of anger and this cruel act. So that's definitely not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to gratefully accept these difficulties and try to digest them. And when they are digested, they will turn into kindness of our heart, softness of our heart, and beautiful emotions of love, which we will experience toward other living entities and toward God ultimately. So that's the lesson, the main lesson of Kunti's life and Kunti's prayers. She teaches us how to become a better being by assimilating and digesting the lessons of our life, difficult lessons of our life.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Rishikesh, India, the capital of yoga, so they say. This is Wisdom of the Sages podcast, a daily spiritual podcast. I'm your host today, Kaustubha Das. My co-host, Raghunath, has the day off today. Mara, what is he doing? Do you know?
He went down to the Kirtan Fest. I think he's going to be at the Q&A table
Oh,
in
nice.
a little while.
Okay.
The Wisdom of the Sages table for some Q&A. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Okay, so Raghunath will be at this festival is incredible. It's like last
it really
night
is.
they served just under 500 people prasadam. So that means there had to be like 600-700 people there probably at least, with beautiful kirtans, people dancing, chanting, all these people in Rishikesh just really appreciating what's being offered. And they got so many things going on. They have like, you know how many saris they distribute every night? They have this thing where like if you're a lady, you can just come in and they just like kind of wrap a sari right around you on the spot, right? And
It's so cool.
and last night I think they distributed like 80 saris, and they do that every night for like a month. But we set up our booth last night for Wisdom of the Sages and the Bhakti Recovery Group, and met a lot of nice people. And I think tonight it's really being turned into more of like a full-on Q&A booth with like a microphone and everything. And so we'll see how that goes. But I guess Raghunath is kicking it off right now. Otherwise, how are you doing, Mary? Are you
Great.
enjoying your time here?
Yeah, it's great.
It seems that we got a real
I'll be
lag.
sad to leave tomorrow.
Yeah. What? But happy to go.
Yeah,
back to
my
work.
internet connection's a little unstable.
Okay. Well, that's not your-
Definitely.
Okay. Any announcements to make, Mara, before we bring on our guest?
There's no show tomorrow, and then on Tuesday we'll be back at 6 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay. Back with the Bhagavatam at that time. On Tuesday, you said. But no show tomorrow. Is that what you just said?
Right, because we're traveling tomorrow.
Okay, good for me to know.
That's right. That's what I said.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mary. Now, today we have a very special guest. This is a guest we've wanted to bring on for a long time, and he has a new book out. Really one of the most brilliant thinkers, I would say, in the Hare Krishna movement, and just a wonderful devotee all around. That's Bhakti Vijnana Goswami. He graduated with distinctions from Moscow State University in 1978. He's a PhD from the Institute of Molecular Biology, the Russian Academy of Sciences, in 1986, and his thesis was on the structure of nucleosomes, sequencing histone molecules on the DNA. I'm sorry if I entirely butchered that, but in other words, it's very advanced scientific stuff for you people out there. In 1980, he started deeply studying Bhagavad Gita and other literatures of ancient India, living in different ashrams in India and abroad, and translating ancient scriptures into Russian. He took part in the first international conference on the study of consciousness within science in San Francisco in 1990, and in the Millennium Peace Summit of Religious and Spiritual Leaders in New York in 2000. He studies Sanskrit and the six systems of Indian philosophy. Since the beginning of the 90s, he widely travels and gives lectures and seminars in different parts of the world on various topics, including Indian scriptures, in the light of modern science. He's the author of 12 books in Russian on various subjects of Vaishnava philosophy and religion. And in 2010, the Public Awards Council of the Russian Federation awarded him the third-degree medal for professionalism and business reputation in recognition of strengthening the Russian-Indian ties and for his contributions to the popularization of the spiritual and literary heritage of India. So it's an honor to have Bhakti Vijnana Goswami. I just know him as a person that has incredibly brilliant insights on the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the book that we read here every day on the show. Bhakti Vijnana Swami, welcome to Wisdom of the Sages. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you.
You know, it's
I heard a lot
sometimes...
about the podcast, and I'm very happy to be with all of you.
Okay, thank you. As I said, it's an honor. You know, sometimes Raghunath and I talk a lot, and this might even be just like maybe a topic for us to interview on some other time, but we really are fascinated and we really admire those devotees that were practicing bhakti, behind the Iron Curtain, so long ago, and you were one of those people. So I'm sure you have many stories, but I don't think that's our topic today. So we'll keep it to your book. But you have a new book out, Amarj, and the book is very related to Srimad Bhagavatam. It's drawn straight out of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's called Healing Prayers. Could you just start off by just sharing with us the subject of the book?
Well, I started thinking about these prayers of Queen Kunti, which is the subject matter of this book, 8th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Some time ago, when there was some tragic events taking place between Russia and Ukraine. It started actually back in 2014, and I had to speak in front of I have some friends in Ukraine, and I have a lot of friends in Russia and followers. So I thought that the subject matter of this book is very appropriate because it shows us and teaches us how to deal with difficult situations and how not to lose dignity in the times of difficulty, but how to enhance our consciousness, so to speak, and how to overcome all these difficulties. So that's the subject matter, prayers of Queen Kunti from the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's related to the difficulties which every one of us has to undergo.
How many verses are included in her prayers in that chapter?
I commented on all the verses which are there. I don't remember how many are there. I started at the end of the 7th chapter with the story, because the story sets the scene. And then I made an elaborate commentary on all the verses from this chapter, bringing the contemporary material and setting it in the scene of the contemporary world, and also taking some advantage of the literary contribution of Russian poets, weaving it all together.
Could you just give us a bit of context of how these prayers, the setting in which these prayers come out?
Well, this prayers at the end of the this prayer starts in the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, but in the 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the tragic end of Kurukshetra war is being vividly depicted when after Pandavas and a few hundred survivals of the world were peacefully setting the night camp, and during the night the Pandava brothers, they went outside of the camp, but the whole survivors of this war, including the 5 sons of Pandavas from Draupadi, were mercilessly murdered by Ashwatthama. So the war is already finished. The Pandavas can celebrate the victory, and they are celebrating the victory. They are relaxed. And then at the very last day, last night of the war, against all the rules of warfare, which were very strict at that time, Ashwatthama comes at night and kills sleeping warriors. And Queen Kunti, mother of 5 Pandavas and grandmother of 5 children, teenagers who were killed after the war, she is praying to Krishna and addresses him in these settings. Of course, the prayers took place little later after Ashwatthama, angry at the Pandavas, attempted to kill grandson of Pandavas, Maharaja Parikshit, in the womb of Uttara. So it's a very tragic and dramatic events with killing. But the most amazing thing is that Queen Kunti, she approaches Krishna, and she knows that he is the Lord. She knows it perfectly well. She knows that he is God himself. She looks at him, and she knows that he is behind all of this. And she starts glorifying him and expressing her gratitude and appreciation, and at the same time trying to understand the meaning of all these tragic and very painful, miserable events. So basically, it's an amazing case of somebody who is in the midst of greatest tragedy of her life, expressing gratitude to the Lord for all the difficulties which he sent to her life. So
Okay.
that's the sin.
Yes. So for those that are unaware, in that war where just so many people had died, almost nobody was left. And Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata and his brothers, the Pandavas, had survived. Their sons had survived. And there was practically nobody left on the other side but Ashwatthama, who was a very powerful warrior. And he was very disturbed for several reasons, which maybe is too much to get into right now. But in that state of mind, he mercilessly, as you mentioned, killed the sons of the Pandavas, who are the grandchildren of Kunti. And so now here's Kunti, who her own husband had died, so long before then, and somehow her sons came out of that war, surviving it, but she had just lost all of her or so many of her grandchildren. And she comes forward to Krishna and she offers these prayers. Now, you call the book Prayers for Healing. Can you explain the title and why you chose that? And why do prayers really heal us? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah, that's perhaps the most important point of the whole book, where I explain in the beginning that in our normal quote-unquote state, we are divided being. We are divided because we feel two pullings in the different directions. Our karma, with all the samskaras, all the impressions within our mind, is pulling us in one direction. It's pulling us to recreate the karma, to enjoy the enjoyments which we experienced before, to repeat this enjoyment, to repeat this experience, or to avoid some miserable experience which we all unfortunately have in this world. And at the same time, there is a completely opposite pulling in an opposite direction, in a spiritual direction. We all have spiritual hankering. So these two pullings, and we all know sometimes we fall prey of the material tendencies which we all have, and we know it's contrary to our spiritual aspirations, or at the same time we are quite happy traveling in the path of spiritual realization. But this divisiveness is the root cause of all our problems. We are not wholesome in a sense. We are not whole. We are not complete because of this division inside, internal division. The internal enemies which are there in our heart, and which are represented as the enemies which we have to fight with. So the prayers, specifically the kind of prayers which Queen Kunti offers to Krishna, help us to become complete, to heal, and to overcome this division, internal division inside. That's why I have chosen this title. It sounds a little better in Russian because, there is a little play of words there. But in English, it sounds quite good too. It doesn't have anything to do with this, magic healing, which some people do, trying to show it as a proof of spirituality. But it's a case of internal healing. When we become strong and wholesome and healed, and in this way we will be able to proceed with our spiritual journey.
That internal conflict, would you characterize that as like a conflict between the self and the mind, and that prayer helps align the mind with the nature of the self, something like that?
Yes, it's possible. Not mind as such, because mind can be our friend, but the mind which is contaminated with sinful reactions, sinful tendencies, or just enjoying tendencies, the tendencies to try to become happy with just material experiences, more or less sensual experiences. So, yes, it's basically prayers which help our mind to heal, because even our physical illnesses and diseases are all founded, or the cause of our diseases are in the mind, and they all have psychosomatic nature. So it's basically the prayer helps mind to heal and to help our soul in its journey.
Okay. The Bhagavatam, of course, is a large collection of prayers. One after another. There are so many, and I'll be honest that years ago, I've been practicing bhakti nearly 40 years now. So years ago, when I'd come to the prayers, somehow they didn't excite me. They didn't interest me so much. It was more the plot that interested, that I took interest in. And I almost maybe felt a little like, okay, here we go again, same thing. They're going to say more or less the same kind of stuff. But as the years passed, it began to occur to me that the plot was just framing the prayers. Like it was really setting everything up so that you would hear from the heart of a great soul their inner thoughts and their realizations and their understanding and their knowledge, maybe most important, their feelings towards Krishna or towards Lord Vishnu. And it became very exciting. But I think along with that, prayer in my own life has developed, maybe in parallel to that. Perhaps, without my even being fully determined to make it happen, the Bhagavatam has kind of, to some degree, opened up a world of prayer for me. But I think a lot of people have trouble praying. I think a lot of people, it doesn't come naturally. It feels artificial. It may even feel disempowering in some way. But could you comment on that? Why is it difficult for us to pray? Is there something that we can do about it?
Sure, because I touched this subject matter in the beginning of the book. I'm making exactly the same point, that sometimes prayer feels like it's just, it's just a botheration. It's something which you have to go through quickly and go along with the story. But you're absolutely right. Srimad Bhagavatam prayers are the most important part of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And why Queen Kunti's prayers are so important, because this is the first set of prayers in the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. It opens the whole culture of prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam. And it has a very specific structure. It's actually very philosophical if you go deeper. If you superficially, just read it, then it doesn't touch your heart. But if you try to go deeper, try to understand, first of all, the structure of the prayers, how they should be composed, because actually one of the reasons why these prayers are there is to teach us how to pray properly, as you said, exactly. So that's Srimad Bhagavatam is the book which is also teaching us or inculcating in us this culture of prayers. And you're absolutely right. It's because we are from a different culture. We are from culture which underscores self-reliance and very much emphasizes this sort of endeavors. Let's make it. We will do it. We're tough people, and so on and so forth. So you're right. For people who have this upbringing, it's very difficult to pray or even to understand or to relate to prayers. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam makes a point to teach us how to pray. And Queen Kunti's prayers exemplary in this regard. Because in the beginning of the prayers, Usually when we say prayer, it means that I want something. I pray for something. But if we study prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam, never, not in any case, somebody approaches somebody who is much more powerful, the Lord, or some powerful incarnation of the Lord, and immediately starts demanding, please give me this or give me that. First, usually he or she expresses their appreciation of the Lord and their understanding of the Lord. And I make the case, if somebody comes to you and wants something from you, you first want to make sure that he understands who you are, understands your inner mood, and appreciates you. And only then your heart will open to fulfill his or her request. So the culture of prayer is first to express the understanding of who is in front of you, who it is whom you pray for something. And that's very interesting because she goes into great lengths to express, first of all, her inability to understand God and his dealings. As I said, sometimes it's very mysterious and bewildering, confusing. So many different difficult things happen in our life. We're good people, at least try to be good. We try not to harm others, and still so many difficulties are coming. So first she expresses her utter inability to understand fully the intentions of the Lord. But then she starts explaining how she understands him. And it's very moving. And I'm sure Krishna was very moved by her expression or her explanation how she understands him and how she appreciates whatever he is doing, even though superficially or externally it may look cruel even. So
The
yes,
events in her life. Yeah.
yeah, I extensively deal with this particular subject matter, and then I analyze the internal logic of the prayers, and of course, the how the emotions are built up along with the prayers. Because of course, the most important point about the prayers is to kind of come in contact with the emotional state from which of the heart from which these prayers are being pronounced or produced. And when we have this prayerful mood, then the prayer is natural. When our mood is completely different, then of course it's very difficult to pray. So I explained this mood of surrender to the Lord, to the will of the Lord, and how ultimately it produces the emotional frame of our mind, which helps us to pray.
You know, of course, we have, I mean, people familiar with Mahabharata already have some background on Kunti, who she is. We've seen even, well, of course, she's the aunt of Sri Krishna himself, so she has an intimate relationship with him in that sense. We've heard that even when she was a young lady, she was a princess, but you know, we don't get a picture of some spoiled princess, you know, being pampered. All that we actually hear that maybe the most important thing we hear about her character is that the sage Durvasa came to her home, and she personally served him. And you know, we're right at the point. We're in the 9th canto now, so we've been talking a bit about Durvasa, a powerful, very powerful mystic, but almost dangerous in the sense that he's easily angered, and he can curse you. You know, he's got a lot of power. And he's quite, I don't know what exactly the word that we use for it, but he's easily upset. But somehow...
Quick-tempered.
I'm sorry? Yeah, quick-tempered, yes. Yeah. And so we hear, though, that her character was so special that somehow she won his heart through her humility and through her expertise, I suppose. And he was very pleased with her and blessed her rather than cursing. He blessed her. He gave her a very powerful mantra, and their stories connected to that. But at the same time, we understand she was a woman that was very much living in the middle of a lot of political unrest and political circumstances. Her own husband was a king. And then she had to live in when he passed away, she had to deal with all kinds of difficult circumstances. Now we see her come up, and as you mentioned, the first thing that she does in her prayers is she's kind of helping us understand who Krishna is. She's expressing who you are. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's something that fascinates me, and I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts on it. One of the first things that she mentions is she says, you are existing both within and without everything. Can you explain what that means? At least to some degree?
Yeah, see, the whole vision of Srimad Bhagavatam, the foundational verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam, depicts the reality as Advaya Gyan, or non-dual consciousness. The philosophical foundation of Srimad Bhagavatam is to explain how the variegated world, which seems to be material, which has so much varieties in it, and which is so bewildering at times, ultimately comes from one source and remains within this one source of consciousness. Basically, the whole meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam is to explain how the reality is ultimately conscious, and the consciousness is fundamental, as opposed to the conceptions of modern science that matter is fundamental and consciousness is just byproduct of matter at a certain stage of development. Srimad Bhagavatam very strongly emphasizes this point that everything is conscious, and consciousness is the background of existence, background of reality. She's making this point from the very beginning, that you are the Lord, you are the source of everyone, and therefore, being the cause of everything, you are inside everyone, because the cause is always behind the effect. And also you are outside because this whole world is made of you. It's your creation, and it's created from you, so to speak. It's a huge philosophical subject matter to understand it properly. But the most amazing point, which we have to be clear about from the very beginning, is that when we, at least, even if we just try to understand something which is very inconceivable, how there is unified consciousness behind this reality, and how this consciousness, both outside and inside, and how this consciousness is ruling everything. The moment we understand, at least to a certain extent, this, or obtain this vision of reality, this moment will also be marked by appearance of genuine spiritual love within our heart. It's not just philosophy or dry philosophy or speculative philosophy. It's the vision which is the background or foundation of love. This vision or theoretical construct itself is not as important as the direct consequences of this vision, which is this feeling, overwhelming feeling of love. Actually, this is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavam atak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. The moment one understands that everything is coming from me and everything is made of me, that I'm both the efficient cause and the material cause of reality, then iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. The person becomes overwhelmed with bhav. Bhav means emotion or love. So basically, the goal of Srimad Bhagavatam is to invoke genuine spiritual love, spiritual feelings, spiritual emotion within our heart. But Srimad Bhagavatam is also very clear. You can only have pure spiritual emotion if you understand the nature of reality and its relationship with its source, the Supreme Lord, and how the Supreme Lord is still very intimately connected with reality, not just a distant being who is indifferently watching what is going on here, or not just impersonal something which is diluted within the reality. No, he is both personal and impersonal, both immanent and transcendent, and both very intimately involved with reality and at the same time completely independent on it, of it. And yeah, that's the vision which he expresses in the beginning, just passing, which is not an easy thing to understand, as you said in the beginning. Yes.
Well, I feel a progression in her prayers where she does come out with this more philosophical, theological kind of, as you mentioned, presenting who Krishna is. But then it does begin to shift towards her feelings towards Krishna, how she personally, in her heart, relates to him.
What is most interesting of these prayers is that in the very first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the beginning, the 6 foundational questions were asked. And practically the third question, after 2 most important questions, the third question, please explain the reasons why Krishna has come here in this world, why he appeared from Vasudeva and Devaki. And all the 5 questions which were asked were answered immediately in the 2nd chapter and the 3rd chapter. But this question most elaborately was answered only by Queen Kunti. She answers this question in all details. Why? What is the reason? Why God himself comes into this material world? What are different hypotheses or different ideas of people when they try to understand this, and what is the real understanding, what is real intention. And then definitely there is a very interesting progression. First, she explains Nam of the Lord. She says, I cannot understand you. And then she starts saying, but there is a way to understand you. And what is the way to understand you? It starts with the name. And she, again, offers the prayers where he lists the names. And the names are progressively more and more, have more and more deeper meaning, which I explain. It's a very interesting thing.
Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki
Krishnaya, yes, 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 it is. And then she explains the form, the lotus form of the Lord, everything which is belongs to the Lord is very beautiful and like lotus, this Pankaja verse. And then, first is name, and then the form of the Lord, then the qualities of the Lord. Then she starts explaining how the Lord interacts with people. And then she explains the pastimes of the Lord, and specifically this particular event when he comes to this material world, why he is doing this. So she's explaining the whole theology in her prayers, the theology of the name and how it should be related, how we should relate to the chanting of the name and to different names of the Lord. Then she explains the form of the Lord and how we should relate with the form. Then she explains the qualities of the Lord, and then finally she explains the activities of the Lord, his pastimes. It's amazing how deeply philosophical it is, and at the same time very emotionally fulfilling.
Deeply personal at the same time.
Yes, yes.
You know, it just shows, I suppose it shows this, how special the Srimad Bhagavatam is, that it comes, you know, again, you're saying these are the first real prayers that we're hearing in Srimad Bhagavatam. It comes right out of the gate with beautiful poetry that's simultaneously deep on a philosophical level. It's fascinating on a theological level, but it's very touching and beautiful on a personal level and on a poetic level. You know, it's got a very deep poetic beauty to it. I suppose for all of us, we're wondering specifically, we don't see the Bhagavatam as like just some work to analyze, as you know, analyze its greatness in whatever fields it's overlapping with, but rather really the relevance in our own life. We're all in this world. We're all suffering in our own different ways. Can you speak to the relevancy of Queen Kunti's prayers in our own lives, the lives of our listeners?
Yes, that's exactly where I started from. I started meditating on these prayers because of the unfortunate events in my own life and in the lives of my audience, of my listeners, explaining how relevant it is. This is the greatness of Srila Prabhupada's rendition of Srimad Bhagavatam. He makes it not as an academic exercise or some museum artifact, which is, you know, has some relevance for people of distant past, but have nothing to do with us. He explains that it's a very relevant book for us, and he brings it closer. So her prayer is basically how to overcome difficulties in our life. What should be our attitude towards these difficulties? How we should remain grateful and unshaken in our faith among the difficulties, you know, in the middle of the difficulties. Because oftentimes when the difficult tests come to our life, we become shaken. The crisis of faith comes to us because we don't understand why. Ultimately, it's coming for our good, but it's very difficult to understand in the process of all these difficulties. And that's why she is chosen in Srimad Bhagavatam as one of the heroes of Srimad Bhagavatam. Her life was so difficult, and she was just a simple woman in a sense. Not so simple because she was a queen, but still, she herself says that I'm not very intelligent, and you know, only very intelligent philosophers can understand you, Supreme Lord. And then she starts explaining what is this suitable means of understanding the Lord and how deeply she understands, appreciates him, and how this appreciation of the Lord, of his involvement in her life, helps her to overcome all these difficulties. Because there are basically two reactions on the difficulties which we have. We may become very negative. We may become very bitter because of all difficult experience. We may accumulate all this pain and sufferings which we underwent. And because of this bitterness, we will feel as a victim. This victim mentality is the mentality which basically ruins the whole world, because when we feel that we're a victim, we develop also some revengeful feelings toward others, toward our perpetrators, and we want to revenge and to get back to them. And when the bitter feelings are accumulated within us, it ultimately manifests as hatred, as envy, as anger. So sometimes we see old people who live difficult life, and everyone's life is difficult. There is not a single person in this earth who will say that my life was so easy and so cozy and so nice and so comfortable. Everyone has their load and their difficulties. So this is one attitude. We take these difficulties and we feel that it's something very unjust. And that's exactly what Ashwatthama did. The villain of this whole drama, who killed Kunti's grandchildren and at night in a very cruel way, he was accumulating and more or less cherishing these bitter feelings, and it erupted from him as this fit of anger and this cruel act. So that's definitely not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to gratefully accept these difficulties and try to digest them. And when they are digested, they will turn into kindness of our heart, softness of our heart, and beautiful emotions of love, which we will experience toward other living entities and toward God ultimately. So that's the lesson, the main lesson of Kunti's life and Kunti's prayers. She teaches us how to become a better being by assimilating and digesting the lessons of our life, difficult lessons of our life.
That's an interesting way that you put it, is that we tend to take shelter of this victim mentality. And you, in a sense, you establish that victim mentality is our fundamental problem.
Yes.
And so with that, then in other words, we can see all the events in our life as a way of purifying us of this mentality. Each time one comes up, each time a challenge, a difficulty, a reversal, a painful event in our life comes up, we can be prepared for it as, okay, here's my next opportunity to try to respond and rid myself of the victim mentality, that there's some growth here. Now, of course, the most, I believe we could safely say the most famous verse from Queen Kunti's prayers is this prayer where she not only deals with the issues, deals with the calamities in life, responsible, but she actually asks for more. She prays, I wish that all those, she gives a list of the different calamities that her and her family had to live through and how Krishna was always there for them. And then she says, I wish that all of those calamities would happen again and again so that we could see you again and again. Now, of course, he's on a chariot about to leave as she's praying, saying this prayer. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Could you just share anything more? Of course, I think you've shared already quite a bit that relates to that, but any other thoughts on that prayer?
Well, this prayer is very unusual. It's probably a unique prayer in the whole history of spiritual history of the world, because usually people they pray for something good from the Lord, and here's the one who lived very difficult life, and she comes and she says, please send me more difficulties.
Well-adjusted person, it seems.
Yes, right. And yes, some foolish way of explaining it is to say that, yeah, she's so used to it, so then she's just programmed to is masochistic and she wants more of all these sufferings and difficulties. But of course, the idea is totally different, much more beautiful and much more harmonious with the spiritual understanding of life. So basically the case which I make in the book while commenting on this particular prayer is that we don't have to ask for difficulties following Queen Kunti, because some people become very frightened that basically she teaches them to do the same, to approach the Lord.
We don't
And
have to pray for more pain in life.
no, we don't have to. It will come anyway, whether we pray or not. But she just teaches us how to turn pain into joy, how to turn pain into happiness. That's the most difficult, but also most important lesson of your life and of your prayers. She just expresses, basically this prayer is the amazing, almost unbelievable expression of the happiness which she feels. Because only if you feel an overwhelming happiness, you can pray for this. So she shares with us very intimately her own experience. And she says that my experience is the experience of complete bliss. Even though I may be bewildered and confused at times, she also openly says about this. But at the same time, my journey of trying to understand you and deal with you was very rewarding. And I know that you were always with me and with my sons. And I pray that you always remain with us in one form or another. It's, yeah, at the end it becomes very emotional, and it's it's it becomes pure nectar to read about your feelings.
Just speaking with you and hearing from you, it is. I feel the focus of the message becoming clearer, and of course she goes on. I guess the focus of her realization about the nature of this material world, how we're meant to grow through it, how we're meant to learn from it, what exactly it is. Because when those painful times come, as you're saying, we might become cynical or resentful, and sometimes the way that we speak about it here on the podcast is like there's two things that could happen. Something's going to break. Either your faith in God may break. Oh, all these horrible things are happening to me. This God, I don't want to have anything to do with this God. Or your faith in the material world will break, right? Like your faith that I'm going to find my happiness separate from God, that breaks. And she goes on to express that, Krishna, you're so easy to approach, except for those people that are materially exhausted. Could you speak to that phrase? What does she mean when she's saying people? Sometimes we feel God's difficult to approach. I'm praying. I don't know if He's even hearing me. What does it mean to be materially exhausted, and why is that a qualification for being able to connect with God easily?
Well, the same thing is being said by Jesus Christ in his Mount.
Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah. So he says that those people are blessed who don't identify themselves with anything of this world. When we are attached to this world, we become, the world become part of us, part of our identity. And because the world occupies a very important place and space within our heart, within our consciousness, there's practically no room for God within our heart. We're always self-centered. We're centered around me and mine. And therefore, it's very difficult for us feelingly pray to the Lord. All our
Feeling.
thoughts are centered around us and our future happiness, hopes for happiness, plans for happiness, or desires for happiness. And we always live in this illusion of future happiness. We are very rarely in the present moment because we always live in the future, something, or sometimes in the past. We are lamenting about the past, and sometimes we are afraid of the future. Like nowadays, so many prophecies are there that there will be some, last days are coming, and this and that. And, so especially in America, we know, and everyone is watching what's going on there.
Yes.
So, but we rarely, to pray, you need to be at present. That's something which is happening at present. For that, you have to be conscious of the state of mind you are in and offer this state of mind or your heart to the Lord, and not to be in the future phantasmagoria, the future, utopia of happy world, which will never be there. So you have to be at present, and that's of course difficulty. And therefore she says, "Tvama kinchina gochara," you are akinchina vita, you are the wealth of those who don't identify themselves with anything in this world. We have to live in this world, we have to have some possessions, but it's one thing to have something, another thing is to become these things, to identify with them. It's one thing to have a car, it's another thing to think I am the car, or the car is my extension.
Part of
the
me.
car
Yeah.
the car is part of me. If you are just, if just use it, utilizes it for practical purposes, that's not a problem. It will not push away or drive away God from your heart. But if the car is there within your heart, it's very difficult for the Lord to be there too.
Fit inside.
They're not very compatible with each other. So either you want to have the Lord, or to identify with the Lord, to obtain the real identity, the spiritual identity, being part of the Lord, or being part of His entourage, so to speak, or His world, or you are part of this world with all the designations which we have. I'm the husband of such and such woman. I'm the possessor of such and such real estate in, in Long Island, in New York, or whatever. I'm I'm owner of that many cars, and I'm the president of the United States, and whatever it is, of Russia.
I'm the husband of this, I'm the wife of that, I'm the parent of this.
Yeah, all these material designations, because the more we are into this matter, the more we don't understand who we are, but we define ourselves through our properties, through our possessions. That becomes the definition of us, and we're basically losing ourselves in all these useless attempts to identify ourselves with this matter. Sooner or later it will be finished, and it will be very difficult and painful departure from all these identities, or all these false identities, because all of a sudden you become nobody, because you didn't establish yourself in eternal sense, in a spiritual sense. And we can only establish our eternity in relationship with God. Only when we are in connection with God, in relationship with Him, our eternal identity can be established and defined and flourished. When we define ourselves through the temporary possessions of in this world, yeah, then our identity will undergo constant change, turmoil, the crises of identity. I was this, but now my body changed, my relationship changed, I was fired from this work, I don't have all these distinctions. Like in the beginning, you wrote a little biography of myself. It's very difficult for me to identify. I was almost surprised to know that I graduated from Moscow State University with this. Forgot about
Seems like
this.
another life.
You reminded me about it.
Okay.
So, either we built up this false identity, which will be ruined at the moment of death, which will be completely demolished by the fact of our death, when we will have to part with it, or we will try to build our eternal identity in relationship with the eternal blissful Lord. And that's why she says that somebody who is not exhausted materially, who still has some grandiose hopes for the future happiness in this world, he will never be able to really come close to the Lord, because it's just an opposite direction.
Marge, thank you so much. We're pretty much out of time. I want to check in and find out where we can get the book. And then I want to ask you one last question briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But the book is officially released now, is that correct?
Yes, it is released. Here it is. This is, I don't know if you see it. Yes.
Prayers. Yes. And where can our listeners find that book?
The first run is already sold out. We are about to print another run of it in hard copies, and then we will also release it on Amazon in Kindle edition. Very soon, I believe in March it will be available. First week of March it should be there, in the beginning of March. So
Okay.
hopefully.
Do you know if it's like available for pre-order, or if they go to Amazon, they'll find it there right now?
Oh, that I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I think
We'll have
Sunil is.
Mara. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can have
Yeah,
Mara look for it, and we'll share that in whatever information we can to direct listeners to it. We'll put that in the show notes in the description of the show. I'm really looking forward to reading it, Marge. I've enjoyed speaking with you. I want a question. Maybe it's a little personal, but when you write a book, you spend so much time with the topic, and you invest your thoughts so deeply into that topic. And of course, the topic here is such a rich bhakti-related topic. It's the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. It's non-different from Krishna itself. It demands that you absorb your mind deeply in Krishna. And I'd imagine in doing so, there must be some special gift, some special blessing that one must receive to write such a book. Could you share maybe something that, some blessing or gift that you may have felt you received through writing this book?
Oh, even Srila Prabhupada said that whatever we do in bhakti basically means meditation on God. The most important words of Bhagavad Gita are very simple, man mana. The essence of Bhagavad Gita is in these two words. Think about me. Krishna says, just think about me, meditate on me. So, and there are different ways of meditating, and they're progressively more and more deep. When you hear, it's a meditation, no doubt about it. Because when we hear, especially if we try to hear attentively and with open heart, then our thoughts are automatically with the flow of the meditation of the person who speaks. But meditation becomes much deeper when we speak, because it's a completely different level of focus and concentration of the mind. When we speak, we need to be much more focused. But when we write, the level of focus and concentration is much deeper than even when we speak, because we have to choose the proper words, we have to deeply meditate. And what is the reward for this? The reward for this is the ability to remember about the Lord, because our memory works on the principle of impressions, of samskaras. Whatever is deeply impressed within our consciousness, whenever leaves deep impression, this is basically the riverbed through which the flow of our thoughts will flow. The flow of thoughts will go in this direction. So when we write, we more or less make this channel or whatever through which or into which our thoughts will flow. So the reward is that it will become very easy and very enjoyable experience to think about the Lord. And the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is about this. Krishna says, Manmana, think about me in the very end of Bhagavad Gita. But then in the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva says, this book is about Satyam Param Dhimahi. Let us deeply meditate on Satyam Param, on the absolute truth, on the highest possible expression of reality. And Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us how to do this. And when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, it helps us to think about the Lord, meditate about the Lord. When we speak about Srimad Bhagavatam, it helps us even more on a more deeper level. But when we write about Srimad Bhagavatam, it's the culmination of these efforts to meditate about the Lord, and then becomes an easy experience.
Mars, thank you so much for being with us today. I look forward to getting your book. I encourage everyone to get a copy when it gets out. I think we lost Samara. I think she's staying somewhere where the internet's not so stable. But we'll make sure that she puts in the show notes places to find the book. Thank you so much, Mars, for joining us, giving us some of your time from Govardhan Hill. I hope to visit your project out there sometime again in the near future. Raghunath and I will be back not tomorrow, but at 6 a.m. Eastern Time the following day. We'll pick back up in the 8th canto. And I would look forward to seeing you all then. As Raghunath would say, let the magic flow, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you again, Marsh. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.